right, Miss Adriane Grace, welcome very much. And I'm going to be clicking through, but I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself.
All right, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. I think this is my second time in this room. A little bit about me. I did start my career at the Social Security Administration after law school. Went to law school in DC. I studied administrative law and regulatory policy, and that's the agency I went to work for. I worked for the appellate division, so basically we had to know the laws, all the rules, all the little emergency messages and things they don't tell the public about, because we were reviewing decisions from administrative law judges across the United States. So it was our job to know all of the law about Social Security. That is where my knowledge comes from, and now I use it to help families understand how to get benefits for their children and how to navigate that process. I do have a guardianship practice and an estate planning practice as well, in addition to handling Social Security matters. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about the fact that there are actually two types of Social Security disability programs, who is eligible for Social Security disability, how Social Security decides a person is disabled, what the disability application process looks like, whether you need to hire somebody to represent you, things to consider after getting these benefits, and then of course the medical benefits that go along with Social Security benefits. First, I want everyone here to understand that there are actually two different disability programs administered by Social Security, and people use these terms interchangeably. They are not the same. The main Social Security program that most people are familiar with started in 1935 after the Great Depression. That's our retirement benefits, our survivor's benefits when a worker passes away, and those are our disability benefits as well. That comes out of your FICA tax in your paycheck every pay period that you pay to the U.S. government, and those benefits are solely based on the fact that you paid into the tax system. In fact, they have a process, and I'll talk about it in a minute, for determining whether a person is covered for Social Security benefit or not. The other program came about in 1972. That's the Supplemental Security Income Program. This is for individuals who don't really have a work history or won't be able to work and who are disabled. I'm actually writing a paper about it, and what I learned is before the 1972 program, it was just a patchwork of welfare programs, and each state had different rules about who was eligible and how much you could get, and it was very inconsistent. So SSI came about to make a flat grant, and indeed it is a flat payment. For 2024, the amount is $943 a month. You don't get more than that. All right, so most of you are probably here to ask about supplemental security income because you're here for your children. You're turning 18, and they probably have some conditions and health problems that keep them from being able to work at what Social Security calls a substantial gainful level. So you're probably considering SSI, and that's really good because in Texas we also get Medicaid with SSI. So I'm going to start by describing that program. That's that 1972 program. All right. So again, it's for disabled adults 18 and over. There is a component for disabled minor children. But because this program is, a welfare program, it's for people who can't work and have never worked before. It's going to look at whether you have limited income and limited resources. And some of these rules with regard to income and resources have been around since the 70s and 80s. They haven't changed them. And it's very important to understand these rules because if your income increases for any reason, if your resources increase for any reason, and if you get married, you could lose the benefit. So this is probably the most important thing, and the most frequent questions I get from parents is about SSI is maintaining eligibility after your child gets approved. So with regard to income, it is possible to work, but there are some rules about that. So for earned income, you can't have more than basically how much an individual could get. And for unearned, or if you mix it, you can't make more than 943, which is what I just told you is the limit for 2024. For children under 18, they are going to look at the parents' income and resources. So it's called deeming, if you ever hear that. So if your child is less than 18, they will not be eligible for SSI if your income and resources exceed these rules. For children who are 18, they'll be eligible the month following their 18th birthday. And it doesn't matter if they're under a guardianship or not, or they're declared incapacitated by a court or not. Social Security rules are that at that point they only look at the 18-year-old's income and resources. So most of your 18-year-olds probably aren't going to have any income or any property or money of their own. So that works out. The resource limit is $2,000. That is really low. I just read the history, and that came about in the 80s, and they haven't changed it in 25 years. And, we ask them to change it. I'm part of a couple of lobbying organizations, increase it to like 11,000, and they don't. They never do. They've given us some exclusions. They've given us some rules about special needs trusts. ABLE account is the last big one that they excluded in 2014, and so I can talk about that too, but you really can't exceed $2,000. If you have a 401k, an IRA, they are going to expect you to spend that down, or you have to figure out how to do a trust. There are a few things that are exempt, like your home, vehicle, burial plot, some personal property of $2,000 or less, and a whole list of other random things you probably don't care about, but for the most part, just remember that rule. You can't have more than $2,000. So that's really important, because if you're collecting the money in a bank account and it exceeds $2,000, you're hitting that limit. So you have to make sure that when you get the SSI, you spend it down. Okay, so let's talk about eligibility. Program rules require that the individual be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. So if you're here on a visa, there isn't a benefit available until you become a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen. You also have to be disabled, and part of the disabled rules are that you're not engaged in what they call substantial gainful activity. For 2024, that's somewhere around earning $1,600 per month. I can't remember the exact number. I looked it up the other day, but it's close to $1,600. I always tell my clients stay under $1,500 because of rounding. Oh, sorry, this is SSDI. I just realized we're talking about SSDI. Did we skip a slide?
Yeah, I missed how much are benefits.
Okay. So we just talked about SSI. Okay, now we're talking about SSDI. Excuse me. I don't have my glasses either this morning. So this is to back up a second to the other slide. This one, it's also U.S. I just want to be clear. Both programs, you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. I know that was a question I was given to address. So whether it's SSI or SSDI, that was a rule that was put into place in the 80s, and it's permanent. Okay, so we talked about SSI. Now let me start over. We're going to talk about SSDI. That's the program, the really old program from 1935. That one is based on the FICA tax. If you're wondering why are we talking about that, it's because that program doesn't just have a benefit for you, the worker. It also has benefits for your family. For example, there are benefits for your spouse if you pass away, your widower. But there's also a benefit for your disabled adult child who became disabled during the developmental period, which they define as a disability that began prior to the age of 22. So you've probably heard people say, I hear like a lot of weird rumors get passed around the community, like, oh, you have to get your kid on SSI before 22 because of this rule. That's not true. I think a lot of people don't understand the rules and they conflate the issues. I've definitely had people who have gotten this benefit who are in their 50s, and working for the agency, we were always on the lookout for the possibility of this being a benefit if a person had Down syndrome or an autism disability. So this is really important to understand because you may have your kid on SSI when they turn 18, but once you start drawing on your own Social Security benefits, this benefit becomes available for your disabled child. So when you hit retirement age and you're pulling on your retirement benefit, this benefit automatically becomes available for your child. And this benefit, because it's under the SSDI program, you don't have to worry about the income and resource rules anymore. They will move your child over from SSI and onto your disabled adult child benefit, and it results in higher benefits, monthly benefits for your child, not having to worry about income and resource rules anymore, and eligibility for Medicare once your child has received 24 months of the disabled adult child benefit. So it's a good thing. I get parents panicking about that, and I try to let them know this is actually a good thing. And then under federal law, their Medicaid coverage will be bridged for the 24-month wait. So nothing to worry there, but be aware of it, because when you go to make your application for retirement, you want to let Social Security know if you have a disabled adult child. Some of the field offices are not good about developing the family information. Denton is one of them. Denton's a terrible field office. If you call Denton and you have problems with Denton, that is Denton. That y'all know that about this program, that when you reach retirement age, hopefully that's a while, but when you do, that you know about all these rules, because there's something really important I want y'all to know about with regard to the program also. Your disabled adult child must be unmarried, okay? The last time I was here, I might have told you a story about a client, and I'll try to keep it generic for confidentiality reasons, but the client came to me because their adult child, they were successful getting the adult child on disability benefits under this program. The adult child's parents were older. They had adopted these children in their late 40s. So their young adult child was able to get on these benefits because the father had passed away in his 70s. And he had paid out max Social Security tax and didn't retire until he was 70. So the adult child's benefits were the highest I've ever seen in my 15-year career of doing this, and they were $2,600 a month. And the adult child had intellectual disability, and when mom came to me, I said, well, did you know that if your child gets married, they'll lose this benefit? No. Okay. So then we discussed guardianship, that maybe, mom needed to become the legal guardian, because a legal guardian could decide if the individual could get married or not. And this young adult was definitely at risk of being exploited and had a history of the potential for being exploited. And we see this a lot. We do see people who exploit Social Security disability beneficiaries. And so if you want your adult child to be able to receive the benefits and not have any issues with regard to that, guardianship might be a consideration as well. With regard to this too, I kind of want y'all to know about that, because I know a lot of parents do have a plan for their child to work part-time, and that's a great thing. You can absolutely work part-time and get SSI or SSDI as long as the work falls within the rules. And in fact, your child could build up their own work record, because you only have to put in about $1,730 of earnings per quarter and pay tax on it to get a credit for Social Security. So your disabled child could actually become insured for disability, for retirement, so working part-time. So I want y'all to know about that, because sometimes your child could get switched over from SSI to their own disability benefit because they work long enough. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is how much are the benefits. As I said, 2024, the maximum benefit for SSI is $943. It's a flat grant program, so you don't get more than that. There are some rules that you need to be aware of that could reduce that benefit, and we'll get to that. The married couple is only if both are eligible for SSI. Most people have figured out the math on that it's cheaper to be divorced than married. both receiving SSI. So few people do that. Disability insurance that's the Title II program. That's that program that comes from the FICA tax. That's that disabled adult child program. That varies and is very dependent upon what you, the worker, paid into the Social Security system. And they do a mathematical calculation. But the easiest way to check on that is you can pull your benefit statement from Social Security by going to ssa.gov and creating an account online. Those of you who are old enough to remember, they used to mail those statements to us. Like they were like green on paper. Well, government decided they want to save money, and instead they want you to go online and check your statement that way. And I highly recommend you do that for a couple of reasons. One, so you can be aware of the benefits you'll be leaving behind for your family, and two, to make sure there's no fraud on your earnings record, because we see that frequently too. We saw that frequently at Social Security as well. Sometimes you can be eligible for both SSI and SSDI. CDB means Child Disability Benefit. Sometimes it's called DAC. We have lots of acronyms in Social Security, so you just can't combine them. So you couldn't, if your child's disability benefit, like just take that one example, was $2,600, and that child was eligible for SSI because they weren't working and they met that low income and low resource rule, they couldn't get $2,600 plus $943. If you are eligible for a benefit under SSDI and it exceeds $943, well, that's going to wipe out the SSI amount. Now there are reductions to SSI. If you recall from the prior chart, I said that you could work and it was almost the amount you could earn from working, while getting SSI appeared to be almost double the SSI benefit. There's a reason for that. That's because they let you keep basically the first $85, and then after that, for every, let's see, $2 you earn, they'll reduce your SSI benefit by $1. Okay, so that's why I said it's possible for your child to have their SSI and work, because it's not a dollar for dollar rule on the earnings. There is also, this one's a really important rule for y'all to know about. This is the 1/3 reduction. It's called In-Kind Support and Maintenance Rule, or ISM. That rule currently says if you are receiving both housing and food from someone else, we will reduce your $943 by 1/3. And so how this looks for our families is they do have their disabled young adult child living with them, of course, and they say, okay, I see that your child's, you're living with your parents, and they're providing you housing, and they're providing you food, going to the grocery store for you. Well, SSI is designed a program that's supposed to pay, now I know this is unrealistic in 2024, $943, but it's supposed to cover housing and food. So when Social Security sees that someone receiving SSI is getting housing and food assistance, they're like, oh, wait a minute here. Looks like you don't need so much of our help, so we're gonna slash your benefits. Now, there's a workaround to that rule. If you enter into a rental agreement with your adult child, then they're paying their fair share of the rent or of the housing expenses, then you won't be subjected to the 1/3 reduction. Currently, there's a proposed rule in the Federal Register to reevaluate the whole food part, because food is so expensive these days. But for now, if you can knock out one of those things, and it's usually to enter into the rental agreement, then they will give you back the money and you'll get the full $943. Field offices vary. So with regard to the housing, the rental contract, I have in McKinney, for example, I live in Collin County. The McKinney office services Collin County. As long as they see a rental agreement, they don't really care the amount. Like we usually put $300 or $400. They don't question it. If they see the rental agreement, they're like, fine, we'll give you $943. Other offices will apply the rule strictly. So if your housing expenses are $6,000 a month and you have 6 people living in there, they will say it's 1,000, and then they may even say you're like helping them. So be careful about that.
And they will ask you questions like if they don't pay your rent.
Very good. Yes.
Just want you to.
Some of them,
know.
some of them will ask because they want to know that it's a bona fide rental agreement, like a real one. So they may ask you, hey, if your kid doesn't pay you rent, will you kick them out of the house? And that, if you say no, then they'll say that's not a bona fide rental agreement. You're still subject to the 1/3 reduction.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Note that.
But every field office is different, so like I said, you just never know. All right, here is the key differences between these programs. So if you want to hold them in your head, SSI when your kid turns 18, SSDI once they've worked or you've retired or a parent has passed away or other caregiver, because even if they're living with a grandparent and the grandparent passes away, they can get a Social Security benefit. Benefits capped at $943 on SSI. Benefits for SSDI vary. Usually they don't exceed $3,000, but it's dependent upon the worker's work record. So if they're under their own, they might not have as many benefits if they worked part-time all their life. If they're under deceased mom or dad or retired mom and dad, that could be a much larger benefit. Could be like $1,500, could be $2,600, like my example of that young adult. Resource limit is $2,000 with SSI. SSDI, they don't care because it's based on the fact that a worker worked in the United States and paid taxes into the U.S. Social Security system. There are no unearned income limits for SSDI. Again, you could be Jeff Bezos of Amazon. He paid into Social Security. He's going to get a Social Security check if he wants it. On the other hand, SSI, you're going to be subject to the $943 limit. That one's a dollar for dollar reduction. So if the individual owned like a house and they were getting rental payments, that's unearned income, and every dollar rental payments would reduce their SSI by $1. When you apply, there's a difference between how much you can get in back payment. When you apply for SSI, your benefits begin the month following the application. So let's say your child turns 18 today, January 17th. You can make an application for them effective February 1st. If you make the application February 1st, the first of the month, your child's benefits will begin that month once they get approved. If you apply February 2nd, your child's benefits will begin March 1st. Do we understand? Apply on the 1st. Okay. And then they will pay the benefits back to the date of the application. So even if it took 12 months for you to get an answer that your child was approved, they will pay back all the way back to that month following the application date, unless you applied on the 1st because you're clever and you listened to me. Okay, and then SSI, you get Medicaid, all right? SSDI, you get Medicare. These are two different programs. They're both federal programs. One's administered by the federal government, one's administered Medicaid by the states. Okay.
One quick question on the SSDI. You are stating in there that once we retire, if our child is on SSI, it'll automatically roll over to SSDI.
I won't say automatic.
Okay.
The field office is supposed to.
Should.
Yeah, should.
Now, what if your income, when you retire, you're gonna still contain or still have taxable income when you're retired? Is that gonna be against something, like is the amount of money you bring home in retirement, is that gonna be capped at a certain amount? If you still have investments or things that are coming in that are taxable, is that gonna disqualify
you? For your child?
Yes, for my child. So
Okay.
if they're going off, if my child's gonna roll the SSDI once I retire, what if my retirement portfolio still has me having taxable income coming in even though I'm retired? Is that going to kick them off of SSDI?
Okay, so your child, the benefit for your child is separate from your own benefit.
Okay.
So when you pull your Social Security statement, you're gonna wanna look at two things. How much is my retirement benefit and how much is my family benefit? They're two separate benefits.
Okay.
So your child will be pulling from your family benefit. And the family benefit, I always describe it like a pie, okay? So
Okay.
let's just say you pull your statement and your statement says your retirement benefit is $3,000 and your family benefit is $2,000, okay? Your children could get up to half of that family benefit.
Okay.
And so they're gonna eat half that pie. But you could have a total of, and under that scenario, $4,000 coming into the household. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you're getting in terms of income and all that because it's two separate benefits.
Right, I was just worried that if the benefit would go over that $3,000.
There's no deeming of income or resource rules to
Okay.
your child once they turn 18. Go really fast, like this one, don't study it too hard. Next one. Y'all won't need to know about the sequential evaluation process too much, but if you have questions, feel free to email me. Alright, I'll just say really quick, it's a 5-step process, but most of your children are gonna get paid at step 3. Step 1 is what I was talking about before. They're gonna make sure your child's not engaged in substantial gainful activity. And thank you to my old self who looked up 2024. The rule is $1,550. So if your kid goes back to work, they cannot make more than $1,550, or if they go to work part-time, per month, or else they won't be considered disabled. And I get a lot of people calling to my office. I've got stage 4 metastatic cancer. Can I get on disability? I find out they're still working. I'm sorry, Social Security doesn't care that you have a death sentence, basically. You're working and making more than $1,550 a month, you're not disabled. This one, your kids are gonna meet because they all have probably a developmental or intellectual disability that's severe. And then the rule that y'all really need to know is step 3. Social Security maintains a list of all different kinds of conditions they consider disabling, and your child's condition will be compared against the list, and they'll decide whether your child's condition meets the description of the list. And they employ physicians down in Austin or their other disability determination services locations like Kansas or wherever. And they look at the list and they look at your child's medical records because they order them, and they see if your child's condition meets something on their list. So let's look at one of the listings. Okay, here's the one for autism. This probably doesn't make any sense to you, but they will be looking at your child's medical records and in some cases evidence you submit to decide if your child meets this listing. Let's look at another example. This one is probably the number one way most of your children will get approved for Social Security disability because it's very objective, okay? So if your kid is already enrolled in special education full-time, it may be because they have a determination of intellectual disability or learning disability. If your child has gotten their IQ testing done and their IQ is 70 or less, they're probably going to get approved for disability under this listing. So you may need to get an updated IQ test done when your child's close to 18 because they're going to want to see the adult IQ, which is like the Wechsler, WAIS. What does that stand for? Wechsler.
Wexler.
Wechsler Adult
It's one of our
Intellectual.
diagnostic.
Yeah.
So all this information should be in your child's FIE. So you want to make sure to keep that information. If you have completely lost that, I can help you know how to secure your records and do a records request with Sandra Sigler here in the district.
Does the
So
school district do an IQ test?
Yes, they frequently do.
I
for
don't want to
services.
say yes all the time.
Okay.
Most of the time, it is within your FIE.
I will say this though, sometimes the testing is done when they're a child, so it's done with the intellectual testing that they do for children, and what Social Security wants to see is the adult one. So when your child is 17, you may need to get another IQ test done for purposes of qualifying under this
Is that something we
listing.
can request?
So that is something that we would need to work with your ARD committee, with your diagnostician to figure out where your child is at, what evaluations are needed. So I'm not going to say yes to your question because that is an ARD committee decision as to how you would move forward. Is it your right as a parent to say, hey, I need this? Absolutely. So you would at that point reach out to classroom teacher, reach out to your SPED case manager, reach out to your child's diagnostician on your campus. If you are, I hope you know who all those people are. If you don't, you can ask me or Misty or Suzanne. Any one of us can help you find those people's names and make sure that by the time your child leaves Coppell ISD, you have everything you need.
Well, let me help you out, okay? Because I get it, resources are limited. Our local MHMR centers do offer this diagnostic testing. So they're all called something different. In Denton County, are we in Denton or are we in Tarrant here?
Dallas.
We are in Dallas.
Dallas, okay.
And so that is a Suzanne Roden question. She has more information about our specific programs,
It's
resources.
MetroCare.
Yes, exactly.
So I will just tell you, let me shortcut this. Denton County, it's MHMR of Denton. Dallas, it's MetroCare. Collin, it's called LifePath. And MHMR stands for mental health, mental retardation. We don't use that word anymore, but that's why some of them have changed their names. But those offices do offer diagnostic testing. They do have wait lists, so when your child's getting closer to 18, they can offer that service for you if you're unable to afford diagnostic testing yourself. Okay. Next slide. I didn't mean to.
No, that's wonderful information.
Step on the issues there. Okay, we don't need to worry about this one so much because, like I said, if you follow my advice here today about what you should submit to Social Security on these applications, your child will get approved at step 3. So you don't need to worry about 4 or 5. We'll keep going. Keep going. All right. So let's talk about how to apply for Social Security disability benefits. And to that earlier question we discussed about, like, what's the best way? Do I need to go to my field office? Okay, in my opinion, the best way to get it started is to make an appointment with your field office. You can either do this by calling the 1-800 number, or you can make an inquiry online. So they don't quite have a process for us to apply for SSI online. You can apply for SSDI, you can apply for RSI, your retirement online. You cannot apply for SSI online yet. What you can do is fill out like a form, basically that's an inquiry saying I'm interested in applying for SSI, and then the field office is supposed to contact you to make an appointment. I've been helping a few parents with this because they have some complicated trusts I'm helping them with, and it's not working the way they claim it is. So I think the better way to do it is to call the 1-800 number and get an appointment with your field office. And the reason why you have to do that is because they're going to interview you or your child about income and resources. Additionally, what you need to know is that they are going to want to speak to your child. Social Security does not recognize power of attorney. So if you've gone to an attorney or if you downloaded a form off the internet because some parent told you in a community, oh, you need power of attorney for your kid. They do not recognize power of attorney. This is a federal program. It preempts state law on the issue. So what their rules say is they need your child to be on the phone with you every time you call and verbally authorize you to speak with them. If your child does not have communication abilities or they have significant limitations in communications or like emotional regulation such that they can't handle a phone conversation like that, you need to get guardianship of your child because that'll be the only way you'll have authority to apply for benefits like Social Security and Medicaid.
If you're asking, I need to know more about guardianship, Miss Grace was out last semester. That presentation is already posted on our website. If you need to know how to find it, everybody should be receiving our newsletter. There's a giant icon on the newsletter that says YouTube channel. You click on that, it'll take you directly there. It's also on our website as well, so if you need to know how to find that, I can help you out after the meeting.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so let's talk about how do you prepare for this application? What else are you going to have to tell Social Security other than about your child doesn't have any income or resources? You're going to have to do proof of residence, so where they live, because again, to the earlier question, they want to match you to the proper field office. They will ask for bank account or direct deposit information. Don't worry, you probably won't have to provide that up front because you don't want your kid to have possession of a bank account with a bunch of Social Security funds. So they will probably appoint you as something called a representative payee. That's where they appoint like a legal guardian or other responsible individual if there's no guardianship to handle the Social Security funds. So you can just defer that till later. They'll want to know if your child's employed. If they are employed, then be prepared to give them a list of the employers for the last 15 years. And of course, they're going to want to know about all the doctors who treated your child, any hospital and emergency rooms, including like I went to Care Now and got treatment for COVID. They need to know all of that.
Quick question on that. I don't mean to interrupt, but when you do the interview, like I have one next Wednesday, but it's a phone interview. They're not doing in-person interviews. So is all that information, is that something I'm about to scan to get to them, or is that something I give them over the phone? And since we don't have guardianship yet, because we're going through that process, will she have to be there to give them permission to talk to me?
Yes, she will have to be there to give them permission to talk to you. Yes, they will ask for all the information over the phone, and if they have any difficulty with that, they may send you a form to fill out that also requests the information and have you send that back. Okay, so here is some things that I alluded to earlier, and I said, hey, if you do the right thing and provide the right information to Social Security, they should get approved at step 3 when they're comparing your child's medical condition to the listing. This is what I recommend you make sure Social Security receives as part of the application for benefits. After you have put in the application, they're going to send you forms to fill out. They're going to send you documents that tell you where you can submit additional evidence. You're going to report all their doctors to them, but they're not going to always do the best job about getting all of the medical records, or frankly all the records. Like I rarely see them be successful getting school records. So I think that your IEPs and your quarterly ARDs are really useful. They go to some of the issues. If you look at I won't make you back up, but if you look at the prior slide on autism, some of the things that they're looking for, they can match up to what's the teachers and the counselors have been saying about your child and these reports concerning their functional limitations. If your child has significant behavioral, that might be helpful as well to show that they're very limited in social functioning. Psychological evaluations and intellectual assessments, you should send those in. They are not very good at getting psychological records. So if you go through the time or expense of getting an evaluation, go ahead and send that in. For parents of children with autism who are, I'd say kind of borderline, I know they grade autism now, it's on a spectrum. You might want to get a more comprehensive psychological evaluation. I've seen some really great 20-page reports that go into quite a bit of detail about functional limitations relating to social, specifically interacting with the public. That's useful for Social Security to know. And then if your child has any occupational therapy records, I'd provide that to Social Security as well. So all of this evidence is really persuasive for Social Security, and just know that you may need to help them out a little with their job and making sure they have the right information. Okay, this is just the various stages, but the goal here is to get approved at the initial level and not have to go and appeal a negative determination. So that requires that You pay attention to all mail coming in, you follow the directions, and you be patient. And make sure that you are getting that information from the prior slide into Social Security and confirming that they have it. This is just an old slide about like percentage approvals, which they're pretty low. But for people who meet a listing, it's not that bad. You consider that there's a lot of people applying who feel that they're disabled, subjectively feel disabled, but really aren't under Social Security's rules. Okay, so important question is, should I hire a representative to help me? Personally, I think that parents can advocate for themselves if they're patient and they understand what to expect. So the whole point of this conversation today is to help you understand what to expect. I think the biggest stumbling block for parents is not knowing what to expect. Is this normal? Are they giving me the right information? So that's why y'all are here today. And then also not being patient, and not paying attention to the letters that come in the mail. Make sure that you are responding. Make sure that you're providing the information that they need to decide your child's claim. And if you're doing that, you really shouldn't need any assistance from a representative. With regard to representatives, they don't have to be attorneys. There are a lot of non-attorneys that are permitted to represent individuals before Social Security. I will say that they are not very knowledgeable about Social Security rules and regulations. They're complex. If you run into an issue, then you might want to consider reaching out for legal assistance. Most of the people I'm helping in my practice have detailed questions about the income and resource rules. Maybe because their child had gotten an inheritance or is working, and so they have questions about that. Or they've gotten sometimes you just get wayward in the process, and Social Security does wonky things, and they send out confusing letters, and it's just wrong information, and they need to know how to respond. Unfortunately, as I said, if you try calling into Social Security or getting help, you might not always get help. You might not always even get the right answer. In fact, increasingly and more frequently now, people are getting the wrong answer. So you may need help in that regard. But most of you shouldn't need help. If you hire a representative to represent you before the agency, meaning they're telling you, oh, I'll submit all the paperwork for you, I will talk to Social Security for you, I will represent you on this claim, they must report any fee they charge to you to the agency. They can either take it from you and report it and ask for permission to accept the payment, or they can engage in a contingency fee arrangement where, if your child gets approved, they get 25% of the back benefits. And considering it's taking a year to get approved, that could be 12 months of benefits at $943. You do the math. I'm not very mathy. That's why I went to law school. Okay. So let's talk about things people need to know after they get the benefits briefly. Go to the next slide. So I did inform y'all, Medicaid comes with SSI. Medicare comes with SSDI, or Disabled Adult Child Benefits. And I think I already talked about some of these rules, so we can go to the next slide. Distinguish also that this Medicaid we're speaking about is separate and different from the Medicaid waiver programs that you're probably being educated about from your transition services providers here. The waiver programs are a different part of Medicaid. Also a different part of Medicaid is like skilled nursing care. For those, you need to go to yourtexasbenefits.com to apply for your child. Waiting lists are really long. Like for this HCS one, a rep from LifePath in Collin County told me the wait is 17 years. So if you've got a 2-year-old, get on the list now. Because you may want to have that available to them when they turn 18. All right. These are different government entities that can help you, and nonprofits that can help you understand any Medicaid questions. There is a Medicaid available for like really like truly like needy disabled individuals whose health problems are so severe, they need like 24/7 medical intervention, and them having providers and having Medicaid keeps them out of like a state hospital. But that is a really hard application to make, and they frequently drop people. Those parents often need help with the appealing, and Disability Rights Texas does offer assistance and has some resources on their websites for those Medicaid applications, but they're very rare. Probably those of you who are here might not need that. All right, a couple of things to be aware about is SSI does have an obligation to review their cases. The SSI program does have an obligation to review cases. If you got your child on SSI before they were 18, when they turn 18, they will do a redetermination where they evaluate their condition under the adult listings. I showed you the adult listings earlier because you're probably applying for an 18-year-old. They do also occasionally re-look at it as well to make sure that people are meeting the income and resource rules. Okay, so this one I want y'all to be aware of too. As I mentioned at the very beginning, because of those income and resource rules, you're gonna have the job of making sure that you never get an overpayment. This is ugly. I get a lot of desperate calls to my office from people saying, I just got this letter. It says I owe $80,000 to the government. I don't understand. Well, I'm sorry you didn't understand, but Social Security expects you to understand the rules and for you to self-govern about what these rules say about income and resources, because they do not have the resources to keep up with it on a real-time basis. Social Security gets a dump quarterly from the IRS of everything the IRS has. So a lot of people think, you know, they could have a job or they could have a trust and not report it to Social Security, but eventually that's gonna spit out a 1099 or a W-2, and now that information that the IRS has on that, well, it gets fed over to Social Security. And eventually it gets processed at Social Security, but often it gets processed 3 years, 5 years, maybe 8 years later, and there's no limitations period for looking back and seeing how long somebody pulled on an SSI benefit while they had this trust with $500,000 in it, or while they had this job where they were making $2,000 a month on it and didn't report. You will get a letter that says, you have an overpayment, you owe us money, we're taking you off the program, we're removing you from Medicaid. You never want to be in that position. So if your child starts, it is on you to monitor how much money your child is making and to work with your family and your own estate planning counsel to make sure no one leaves them a gift or inheritance that's not structured either in a special needs trust or an ABLE account, because that could cause an overpayment and your child to lose their benefits. And let me tell you, it is not easy to get back on benefits if because the rules change. Like I was just speaking to somebody yesterday, and they told me their disabled adult child got on benefits for a mental health issue in 2010, and the person was in their 30s, and I thought, wow. And then I remembered, oh yeah, we had different rules on how we evaluated that mental health condition, such that if that person had to get on disability today, they wouldn't be qualified under the new rules. So you want to make sure that you're staying on top of these income and resource rules. And in fact, I'm going to give a talk to lawyers and judges in a month specifically about how to avoid this and how to help your client once this happens to them. And then of course, we want to pay attention to marriage, because if your adult child gets married, they will no longer be eligible for the disabled adult child benefit. And then if they're on SSI, the income from their spouse will be deemed to them, so they could lose an SSI benefit. So income, assets, and change in marital status, that's what you need to be looking for. These are your options if you get an overpayment. By the time I get a phone call about the $86.50, whatever $1,000 it is, and I hear about it, there's nothing you can do. You're gonna be required to pay it back. You're gonna have to get on a payment plan or say it's an undue hardship and ask for forgiveness. And that's an admission of liability. If you're acting as a representative payee, this is a bigger issue because you're acting as a fiduciary. You're acting for your adult child. You will face civil and criminal penalties if you screw this up. Know the rules. Because I hate those calls. I don't know what to do for these parents. It was on them to know the rules. I can't help them. And not only that, if they are the legal guardian of their child and they've messed up the Social Security benefits and the court finds out about that, that could be a basis for removing them as legal guardian. So know the rules. Okay. This one is important and will be my last slide, I believe, because many of you, like I said, want your child to work, and I think that is very important so that they have a meaningful life as well. But I want y'all to understand these 3 rules here because as long as it's very part-time, it's possible to get the SSI benefit, get the Medicaid benefit, and get some earnings. And actually, it is possible to have your child bring in more than $943 a month this way. But you want to be wary of the rules. Additionally, these are programs that came about, I just read the history on this, in the 90s, and I'm finding parents know very little about these rules right here. So basically, once your child gets on benefits, you'll get letters from Social Security. I think parents must be ignoring them that talk about work programs that your child can participate in. And what these programs do is, like, without going into too much detail and confuse you, is they kind of let you earn a little bit more money and basically I guess they give you further reductions on your earned income than the basic 20 and 65. So I'll just talk about this one real quick as an example. This one stands for impairment related work expense. So if your child needed certain things to enable them to do the job, like they needed orthotics in their shoes or glasses or something, you could enroll in this program, report to Social Security what this monthly expense was, or even transportation if they need to take public transportation to work because they don't drive or they can't drive. You would report to Social Security how much that expense was per month, and they would reduce the income by that expense. So in essence, it kind of allows your kid to even earn more because they'll reduce some of those expenses. But you have to affirmatively enroll in these programs. And what they do is they help you avoid that SGA rule and then help you reduce the income so you're not going over the amounts. I will point out here in this yellow box, use a WIPA. Again, parents look at me with confused, what the heck is this WIPA? I've never heard of that before. Again, the program, Social Security, SSI, pays for this. So they have contracts with nonprofits in different states where they are supposed to help people on SSI enroll in these programs and identify programs they might be eligible for. It used to be Easter Seals, but during COVID I learned they changed the contract. It's called Imagine Enterprises. You can Google them. So if your child's gonna work, please reach out to them and schedule with a WIPA to understand if maybe your child could enroll in one of these programs. Okay. This is my contact information. Like I said, I think most of you should be fine advocating on your own for your child.